They argued over my funeral expenses while I was still alive. They didn't even lower their voices. That's what struck me the most. I was sitting just one room away, alive, alert, and only slightly slower than I used to be. Well, they argued about cremation versus burial, flowers versus no flowers, and whether or not it was worth having a reception afterward. And not one of them paused to consider that the person they were discussing still had ears to hear and a heart to break. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, listening to my name being tossed around like a line item on a budget sheet. Mom wouldn't want anything fancy. She wouldn't know the difference. Let's just do something simple. She hated attention anyway. It was surreal. I wanted to knock on the wall and shout, "Hello? I'm not dead yet." But I didn't. I just sat in the quiet, my breath shallow but steady, and let their voices carry over me like a fog I couldn't push away. And in that moment, strange as it sounds, I wasn't even angry. I was stunned, saddened, yes, disappointed, sure. But mostly, I was struck by the bitter irony of it all. These were the people I'd given my life to. Diapers changed, school plays attended, birthdays remembered, crises handled. And now, without even a hint of hesitation, they were standing in my kitchen trying to figure out the cheapest way to say goodbye. There's something about growing old that no one really prepares you for. Not the physical aches, you can pop a pill for those. Not even the solitude, there are books and birds and long walks to help with that. But the true weight of aging is the slow, quiet erosion of visibility. The sense that you're no longer the center of anyone's orbit, that decisions are made around you, about you. As if you were furniture, no one bothers to move, but everyone assumes they own. This is not a story of pity. I'm not here to beg for sympathy or wallow in sorrow. No, this is a story about what happened after that conversation, the one that felt like a rehearsal for my exit while I was still fully in the room. It's a story of awakening, of reclaiming breath, of standing up, not in protest, but in declaration, because I am still here. And I have things to say. And if they're going to talk about my funeral while I'm alive, then they'd better be ready to hear what I think about my life. It doesn't happen all at once. That feeling of being invisible, it starts small. You say something at the dinner table, and no one replies. You make a suggestion, and it's met with polite silence or a quick, "We'll figure it out." You walk into a room, and the conversation doesn't pause. Not out of rudeness, that would almost be easier. No, it's indifference that stings deeper. That subtle, unspoken shift when your presence no longer seems to alter the air in the room. I began to feel it in the way people stopped asking me for advice. The same people who used to call at midnight in tears, or run to me in the grocery aisle because they couldn't remember which cough syrup to buy for the baby. Slowly, the calls came less, then the visits, then the questions, gone. It was like I had gone from being a lighthouse to a lamppost. Still there, still standing, but no one really looking anymore. Doctors started talking around me. They'd ask my son or daughter-in-law, "How's she been eating?" Or "Does she seem confused at home?" While I sat 2 feet away, as if my voice had faded, as if my body were a case study and not a human shell filled with a living history. I wanted to interrupt to say, "Ask me. I'm the one with the body. I'm the one who still tastes the food." But something in me had grown tired of fighting to be seen. Even when I was with people I loved, I started to feel like a placeholder. Like I was there for tradition, for appearances, not because anyone truly needed me anymore. That's a painful thing to admit, but it's true. They still loved me, I believe that. But love, unchecked by presence, can start to feel like memory. And memory is something people visit, not something they live with. So when I overheard them arguing about my funeral expenses, the part that broke me wasn't the subject matter. It was the fact that I realized they hadn't really seen me for a long time. I was alive, yes, but I'd already become a future event in their minds. Not a current heartbeat. That day started like most others. I had toast with jam, half a boiled egg, and a bit of black coffee that had been sitting too long on the warmer. The morning was quiet, just the way I liked it. The birds arguing in the yard, the hum of the refrigerator, the slight creak of the house settling. Ordinary peace. Then they arrived. 2 of my children and 1 in-law, faces drawn with that practiced expression, that mix of busy concern and subtle impatience. I thought they'd come to check on me, maybe help organize the meds or take a look at the leaky faucet. I didn't ask for much, just a little company now and then. I was in the next room folding laundry when I heard the words, "She's probably not going to make it through the year anyway." Well, should we go ahead and talk to the funeral home, prepay it? We don't need anything elaborate, a simple urn. No sense in overspending. Honestly, Mom wouldn't want anything expensive. She was never like that. And then, the kicker. If we split the costs now, we won't have to deal with it all when it happens. Better to be practical. I stood there, a half-folded towel in my hands, heart still beating, ears fully working, breath still flowing in and out of my chest, and I realized I was no longer someone to plan a birthday for. I had become an item on a checklist, a budget, concern, a future inconvenience. And again, I didn't feel rage. I felt a kind of sorrow so deep it couldn't find its way to the surface. They thought they were being responsible. They thought they were being kind. That's what stung the most. They didn't see the cruelty in their efficiency. I didn't walk into the room. I didn't interrupt. I finished folding the towel. I sat down and stared at the wall for a long time. I tried to imagine what my face looked like in that moment. Not from the outside, but from the inside. And the truth is, I looked like someone who just realized she'd been written out of her own life story before the final chapter even began. I didn't say anything that day. I let them leave with their paperwork and estimates and brochures in their neat folders. I let them pat me on the shoulder, offer a quick, "Let us know if you need anything," and walk out the door like they had accomplished something noble. And maybe, in their minds, they had. But something had shifted in me, not out of spite, not even out of pride, but from a place deeper than both, a place that still wanted to be seen as living. Not as a burden, not as a box to tick, as a woman, a soul, a voice, a presence. The next morning, I made myself a list, not of what I wanted them to do, but of what I wanted to do. I wrote down 10 things I'd been putting off. Some were small, make strawberry jam from scratch. Others were bolder, go to that art class downtown. But the biggest one was this: talk to them. Say it out loud. A few days later, I invited them back. Not all of them, just the ones who had spoken the loudest that day. I made tea. I even put out cookies, though I knew no one would touch them. When they sat down, I took a breath and looked each of them in the eye. I heard everything I said. The room froze. One of them opened their mouth, then closed it. Another looked down at their cup. "I'm not angry," I said, "but I am alive. And I don't want to be planned for as if I'm already gone. I want to be part of this conversation. I want to be asked." I told them how it felt to hear them divide me up like an estate. I told them I understood the need for preparation, but that respect isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about showing up and saying hard things with the person, not around them. And then I smiled, because it wasn't about guilt. It was about dignity. Someday, yes, I will die. And if you want to plan my funeral, I'll help you. I've got some ideas, but today I'm still breathing. And I'd rather talk about what we're doing this weekend than where you'll bury me. It was quiet for a long time. Then, my daughter started to cry. My son apologized. The in-law looked shaken, but nodded. And in that moment, I saw something return to their eyes. Something I hadn't seen in a long time. Recognition. They saw me again. And I knew whatever came. Next, I had taken my life back, not from death, but from invisibility. I woke up the next day and stretched a little farther than usual. It wasn't because the arthritis had suddenly packed its bags. It was because my spirit had stopped shrinking. It's a strange thing to admit, but that conversation, as painful as it was, lit a fire in me that I didn't even know was still there. I'd spent too long sitting quietly in corners, smiling politely, not wanting to cause a fuss. But now I wanted to make a little noise. Not the angry kind, the joyful kind. The kind that reminds the world, I'm still here. So I made changes, not dramatic ones. I didn't skydive or buy a Harley, but I did start doing things that made me feel alive. I joined the seniors storytelling circle at the library. Every Thursday afternoon, a group of us, some walking with canes, some in wheelchairs, all sharp as ever, gathered to tell the stories that our families no longer had time to hear. And oh, the stories we shared. I started cooking again. Not out of obligation, but for pleasure. I tried recipes I'd always wanted to make, but never had the time or nerve for. I burned some. I nailed others. I ate off the good china just because it was Tuesday. I called old friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Some of the numbers were disconnected. Some voices were weaker than I remembered. But every conversation felt like stitching a little piece of myself back together. One day, I signed up for an online art class. I hadn't drawn anything since high school, but I bought a cheap set of pencils and gave it a go. I wasn't great. But when I looked at the messy little sketch of my backyard, I didn't see failure. I saw proof of trying. And that felt better than perfection ever could. I went to a community dance one weekend, not because I knew anyone there, but because the music drew me in. I didn't stay long. Just one slow dance with a gentleman named Harold who smelled like peppermints and wore orthopedic shoes. We didn't talk much. We just swayed to the music like two people who had no one to impress and nothing to prove. And you know what? That night, I laughed louder than I had in years. Real laughter, belly laughter. The kind that makes your eyes water and your ribs ache a little the next morning. The kind that says, I'm not gone yet. There's something liberating about no longer being afraid to be seen. To wear colors that don't match. To cry in public. To say, I don't know, and not feel shame. Aging isn't about disappearing. It's about unfolding, becoming more of who you really are, not less. I stopped waiting for invitations. I made my own plans. I stopped worrying about what they'd do with me after, and started asking myself what I wanted to do now. I stopped preparing for death and started preparing for dinner. I stopped dying quietly, and started living out loud. The funny thing is, they don't argue about my funeral anymore. I think, in some way, they're scared to bring it up now, not because I snapped, but because they finally saw what I wanted them to see. I'm not done yet. And if you're watching this, maybe you're not done either. Maybe they've talked around you, planned for you, decided what's best for you without asking. Maybe they've made you feel like an afterthought in your own story. And maybe you've started to believe them. Don't let them fold you into silence. Don't let them shrink you into a box just because it's easier to manage. Don't let the world decide your story is finished. Just because the font is a little faded. You are still here. You are still breathing, aching, laughing, remembering, dreaming. That makes you alive. And as long as you're alive, you get to choose how you spend your mornings, what you say yes to, what you walk away from, what kind of legacy you live, not just leave behind. You don't need permission to live loudly in a world that tries to quiet you. You've earned your voice, you've earned your presence, and you've earned every damn right to say, I'm not done. So go ahead, stir the pot, wear the bright scarf, sign up for the dance class, speak your mind, bake the pie just for yourself, and laugh like the room is listening, because it is. And so MIWE are still here, and we're not going. Quietly,